Now this is a bit more my speed. The M103 is an immensely enjoyable heavy tank, and it's the only American heavy that I've held on to after unlocking the next tier. It's a bit sad when it's stock purely because the 105mm is a bit long in the tooth by tier 9, but luckily the first 120mm is an unlock that you can make first before any others. You don't need to upgrade the tracks and you don't need to upgrade the turret to get it. And once you've got that decent gun, this tank plays beautifully. It gives me everything that I want from a heavy tank. A bit of speed, gun depression, decent DPM, a fair amount of punch in the alpha department, and enough armour to get you by in most situations, provided you're not giving up your sides too much. True, by tier 9 standards the armour is not really much to write home about, but it's enough to get you by, and considering the gun depression and mobility, it's a decent trade-off for this vehicle. I absolutely love the M103 and have held on to it, even though I've upgraded the T110E5, even though I've got a comparable and arguably better vehicle in the Conqueror, but it feels a little bit faster and a little bit looser than the Conqueror, so there's enough differentiation there to make it worth it. And the active aggressive playstyle that this tank allows is really my preferred mode of play. I find those sorts of quick aggressive games to be the most enjoyable to play. So much so that it's the only way that I can enjoy this god-awful map. The only way that I really enjoy playing on Windstorm is to use the mobility to get stuck in across the river, set up an early aggressive beachhead, and just put this gun to use, shaving health off with a great rate of fire. And it's the awesome mobility and the great gun depression on this thing that really opens that up. Arguably I could do the same thing with an E75, possibly even better because of the awesome frontal armour, but it's just so high profile that it may feel a little overexposed the entire time, and crossing that river, the huge sides of that vehicle would just be a gigantic shoot me sign for the enemy. And the Soviet T10 definitely has the speed to do this as well, but the lack of gun depression on that machine is a real killer compared to what the flexibility of the M103 allows. This is what makes the M103 such a comfortable tank to play, the versatility. It's so open to application in certain areas that may not suit other vehicles, so you've got a feeling of complete freedom of movement with it. And provided you're mindful of the support that you're getting, so that you don't overextend yourself, you can really farm a hell of a lot of damage, just by being in positions that the enemy may not expect you to be. As the saying goes, it's the shot that you don't see coming that kills you. Now, I could have done the traditional defensive heavy play and just stayed hunkered down on the other side of the river trading shots at range, but that would really be handing the advantage and the initiative to the enemy, allowing them to dictate the rate of fire and the rate of engagement. Basically, the M103 does not have the best armor profile at range, and the accuracy on the gun is not fantastic. And then you've got to factor in the fact that the strong point of it is the rate of fire, and by letting the enemy stay at arm's length and pop in and out of cover to shoot you, you're surrendering that rate of fire advantage. So this right here is exactly where the fight favours me. I'm up close enough that I can keep jumping into a position where I can pull the trigger as soon as I'm reloaded. The enemy is finding it hard to hide from me, and I'm close enough that my relative inaccuracy is not much of a problem. I can just zoom in on the soft spots in the enemy's armour quite quickly, and when they take their return shots against me, I'm up close, rocking backwards and forth to make it harder to pinpoint the weaker spots in the armour, and using the low ground next to the river here to hide most of the glaring weaknesses in the armour. Just as importantly, I've got enough support from the T29, the Chi-Ri, and especially the Ferdinand with its ferocious rate of fire on that 12.8cm, that if the enemy tried to rush me to dig me out of my little position there, it really is questionable whether the trade-off would have been worth it in terms of hit points lost. So we've had the luxury of pushing the attack and putting the enemy onto the back foot, having eliminated the T10 and the IS-3, so now that we're down to just the T32 and the T43 versus myself and a T29, they're really outclassed, and an opening spotted by the LTTB means that the enemy is effectively surrounded and can no longer just fight against one direction. They can't dig in to draw this out. And just like that, pure as clockwork, this flank is going to fall, freeing us up to move in on the centre of the enemy force. My initial beachhead was entirely successful, and returning this game into a series of sequential and advantageous engagements where, piece by piece, we're dismantling the enemy team. Tragically, I've lost one of my gunners, mitigating the rate of fire advantage that this vehicle has, but luckily enough they give you a spare. So it's time to push off and find some more damage to farm. The question is, where am I best positioned to help the rest of the team? Because although we do lead the enemy by 3 tanks, we are spread out over the map in such a way that if the enemy grouped together and pushed out in one direction, that could rather rapidly flip. So the direct route to the last spotted location of enemy vehicles is probably the best bet for me, considering I'm still fairly close. My presence can at least keep them lit so that we know where they are and potentially pin them down. And in any case, it is now impossible for me to group up with the E75. So we know that the Waffle killed him, and where he was when he died seems to indicate that the Waffle Panzer IV is going to be between me and him, so I can't sneak the long way around the Waffle without wasting too much time, and thereby letting him kill my team, so I'm going to have to go for the Waffle before progressing on to help with the T25/2, which means it's a good idea to finish off this lightweight so that I'm not spotted while moving in on the Waffle 4. Truth be told, I would rather he doesn't see me coming. So now he's lit, I have to decide which way to approach him, and I would rather not cross the open side here with artillery support potentially ruining my day. And as my armour is definitely not good enough to stop any of the guns on the Waffle 4, I would rather have a lot of solid rock cover between him and myself when I go to make my attack. Just pop out my head, take a shot, and hope that an extreme angle will miraculously ricochet one of the 12.8 or 15 centimeter rounds that he will be lobbing my way. And with any luck, doing that might help me live long enough to finish the job and kill him. Or at the very least hold him in place long enough for the rest of the team to arrive and finish the job for me. And it looks like I've made the right call, because the enemy has all grouped up into the same location. So it's a good thing that I didn't go and take a tiki tour around the long way and waste everyone's time. And thanks to the lay of the land here, it looks like I can engage these guys one at a time, just cut down the fields of fire so I don't get swamped by all 3 of them. Especially since the rest of my team is effectively surrounding them, so they're going to have to be mindful of all those guns trained on them. I certainly don't envy their position at this stage, considering they're down to 2 proper vehicles and an artillery support piece. They are both one-shots, and neither of them have the armour to challenge my gun. So of course it's inevitable that my American inaccuracy is the one thing that saves them, for roughly half a second. And sadly, however good the M103 is at farming damage at the end of the game, swooping in on the last stragglers and remnants, my team has fully surrounded the enemy and are in much better dispositions than myself, so those hungry bastards get to feast while I watch on, shouting words of encouragement bitterly between clenched teeth. It's been a quick, clean, aggressive game where the damage dealing has not let up. It's been a constant series of sequential firefights, all of which were very handily in my favour. The mobility of this vehicle has allowed me to set the terms of every engagement, so I've hardly been challenged throughout. So that generally is the way to play the M103. Use your mobility to pick the fights and stack the odds in your favour. Use that rate of fire to hoover up damage in your brief bursts of sustained engagement before moving on to the next engagement that you've also had stacked in your favour. And never let the enemy dictate terms, because your armour will not allow it. Fight smarter, not harder.